You do the math of why you've got a big old house, unless he just wants to be closer to home. As governor, he just wants to be closer to home and not go back and forth to Washington, D.C. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And that, by the way, was also raised in the lieutenant governor's race against John Wall about his Tennessee driver's license and his fake IDs and his fake name. This is the best that the Republicans can get? Really?
I know, right?
I mean, come on, guys.
Welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. And I don't know. There's a gentleman who's been in hiding that, and by hiding, I mean going from county to county and speaking at public events for the last several months, that apparently is running for governor. Senator Jones, how are you?
I am doing good. I am taking antibiotics for the mind virus that I allegedly have that has gotten me all kind of weird. So I'm doing great for you guys today.
Good. I heard you were afflicted with this woke mind virus.
Yeah.
Which apparently means you display intelligence, compassion, competency, and empathy. And so I hope you don't cure it, but it's good that you're doing well. All right, so we're into it now, right? I know there's a lawsuit's been filed. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but this is a full-blown campaign. Tommy Tuberville, it seems, for the time being, is going to be the nominee until a court decides otherwise or not. And so, how are you progressing? What does the campaign look like? What's your optimism level?
I am highly optimistic, Josh. I appreciate, and by the way, I appreciate you guys having me. It's been a while.
Thank you.
If you go back and look at what happened on primary night, May 19th, it was pretty extraordinary. I think people forget. Everybody, tends to look at who wins and who loses and that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is that Democrats from one end of Alabama to the other overperformed everywhere. I mean, there were more than double the number of ballots that went out for Democrats from 2022. And even about 30% more than from 2018, which was kind of a high water mark for us, at least in recent times. So if you look at that and look at the very few contested races that we had in the Democratic primary, only 4 statewide and some local. The congressional district up in Huntsville was contested pretty heavy, some locals, but there wasn't a lot of money spent in that Democratic primary either. And you contrast that with what happened with the Republicans, who spent millions and millions of dollars trying to race to the bottom with some of the crap that we saw, but they literally had up and down the ballot, they had a whole bunch of races, and they were about 25% down from their ballots. There were more Democratic ballots that went out in Madison County, Jefferson County, Tuscaloosa County, Montgomery County, Mobile County. And I got to tell you guys, that's pretty extraordinary numbers for us. So we are seeing an excitement. We're seeing people pulling together. And I think going forward, it is going to help us in terms of both fundraising, but the number of people that are just calling the campaign, getting involved with me and others that are out there running that we recruited is pretty extraordinary. So we're really excited about where things stand right now. And we know it's still going to be a slog over the next 5 months, but we're ready. We're up to the challenge. It's really cool.
Yeah, as I was telling you, I know for a fact there was a short, very, very pretty lady that was just at your campaign office picking up things. And so I know there's a lot of excitement around with folks for the campaign itself, but where the attack is going to come, because Tuberville's already started.
Sure.
The woke mind virus, the leftist, all this sort of stuff. So what I wonder is, though, because that is a tried and true tactic from the right. That's a tried and true tactic from Republicans. They've dirtied up the label of Democrat to mean something that it doesn't really mean. But they've dirtied it up enough to make people believe that it does. So what is the message of your campaign? When you go out and talk to people, and try to pull folks from the middle, pull folks from the the sane Republicans that want to vote for a steady hand and good government. What do you talk to them about? What do you say? What's the message?
You know, my message is going to be the same as it was when I was in the U.S. Senate, when I ran both times. And I need to remind folks that, yeah, look, there is a message that you tried and you hope people will come over to your way. But there's already in this state been 920,000 people that have voted for Doug Jones. And that was in 2020. And yeah, I lost, but that was a race in which 2.3 million people voted. And they're not going to vote in those kind of numbers, anywhere close to those numbers in 2026. So we're going to first talk to the people that have voted for me in the past. And some of those, by the way, in 2020, there were about 70,000 of those voters that voted for Donald Trump and did not vote for Joe Biden, but they voted for Doug Jones. And so our first job is to talk to those voters and say, the Doug Jones that you voted for in 2020 is the same Doug Jones that is today and wants to be your governor. It's the same Doug Jones that's going to talk about healthcare costs, that's going to talk about rising electricity rates, that's going to be talking about education, talking about workforce development and trying to get more people into the workforce. That's going to be talking about, as I've said before, that crowded table where everybody has a seat and everybody has a voice, as opposed to the vitriol, the hate, the divisiveness that you're going to hear from the other side with no real plan. So we're going to talk to those voters first. And as we talk to those voters, we'll be talking to other voters as well. We're going to be comparing my record, my 3 years in the record with Tommy Tuberville's almost 6 years now in the United States Senate. We're going to make those comparisons because, frankly, guys, I don't think there is a comparison in terms of getting things done and working for the people of this state. We're going to make that point. We're going to talk about how I was named one of the most bipartisan senators when I was there a couple of years in a row. You don't hear that about Tommy Tuberville, who calls Democrats godless and Marxist and globalist and other names of which he really doesn't know the meaning of. And so we're gonna bring all that. That's how we're gonna run our campaign, not their campaign. And I think that's what people are looking for right now, Josh.
Doug, my first of all, let me just say, my hope certainly is that you prevail in November. Let me be crystal clear. Let me be crystal clear about that. I wonder, though, going back to what you just said, I wonder if Tuberville's appeal to his voting base is going to be more energizing than the appeal that you will have for our voting base. And the reason that I'm framing it this way is that we know that ultimately this is going to come down to who gets out the vote. And as you said, this is going to be probably, if not a historically low voter turnout, it'll be fairly low. We just saw an 11% turnout Tuesday, overall, about 25%, something like that in May. So I just wonder the very logical, thoughtful approach that you just laid out, is that going to be enough to energize our voting base?
I think it's going to be, well, look, David, here's the thing. You asked me what my message is going to be. That's going to be a message, but behind all of that will be messages about how Tuberville blocked the appointments, the promotions of generals for over a year and threatened national security. There will be the underlying discussion about how he has made money off of his office, literally made millions of dollars with the inside information that he's done. So there is a level of what most people would consider corruption that we're going to bring out. That's part of the record. And there's no question that part of the motivation for folks in this campaign will be to get rid of Tommy Tuberville. There is no question about that. But I've got to also have that positive message. And whether or not we can motivate the base, I think the numbers are bearing out exactly. If you've come to one of our big events, you will see a hell of a lot more people at those events than you ever see at any Tuberville event. If you come to and you look at the numbers from the primary, I got almost 80% of the vote in the Democratic primary, in a primary that saw double the number of votes from 2022, 30 more than in 2018, more than that from 2014. So I think you can see that people are excited. And the reason they think that they see, I believe, that we motivate is they see the opportunity that we haven't had in a couple of generations to win elections. And winning elections means a lot to the voting base out there. And I think they see that with me. And quite frankly, we're giving them choices. And we're seeing that with the other folks that are also running as part of what we're calling a ticket for change. So, yeah, is it going to be a challenge to us out there? Absolutely. It is a persuasive vote. We've got to persuade people not to vote for us. I got to persuade people to get out and vote. That is our challenge. We accept that challenge because I think that we're not any different. But one thing that motivates, I think, people more is that they now know who Tommy Tuberville is, and they don't like it. He is not just this coach from Auburn and can stay in hiding. They have seen his divisiveness. They have seen him calling inner city teachers ignorant, that they can't read, they can't write. They've seen him talk about folks that literally get SNAP benefits by saying, they don't deserve them. They need to just get a job. Well, most of them have jobs. They've seen them take away healthcare subsidies and vote to continue to do the things that have hurt the folks in Alabama. So I think he is a motivating factor for us, but I also think that what we are going to be able to present and talking to people is going to be a motivating factor as well.
Well, I know as far as I'm concerned, it is essential that we keep him out of office, which is why, again, I say I really hope that you prevail. I want to posit something. One of the issues that has come to the fore this year in particular has been data centers.
Yeah.
And I know that there is a very real controversial effort to locate a data center in Lowndes County. I know that that's part of you may have more current data than I have on this, but from my reading, my understanding is that a heavy concentration of the people that you're going to need to turn out to vote are in Lowndes County, surrounding counties, some of these Black Belt counties. Do you see that as a possible issue that can connect with voters and get people to turn out to vote?
100%. And it's not just in those rural areas. It's not just in minority communities, David. That's a little bit of a misnomer in the sense that folks assume that these data centers are going up here in Birmingham. There's one out on Oxmoor Road next to the Humane Center that's going up that people are up in arms about. There's one they're talking about it in Leeds and other places. So these things, what I worry about is Alabama, given our history of allowing these projects to come in under cover of darkness without any kind of notice, without any kind of public hearing or even public information. Just come in and do these things and they're a done deal, that we're going to be a dumping ground for data centers. I mean, and so what I think that's going to be an issue for people up and down the state, not just in Lowndes County. It is going to be there, but I think it's going to be an issue for everybody, because I'm telling you, these big tech companies and all their billions of dollars, they're going to be looking for wherever they can to put these things. And my view on this is that we got to start some guardrails now. First of all, I think the state ought to just literally either eliminate or put a hold on any tax abatements, because these things are coming in. They're not going to provide a whole lot of jobs except for the construction. And I get that the building trades union and others want to see these things because it's good jobs. Those things come, then they go, and these data centers employ 10, 15 people. That's not going to provide a lot of incentive, but yet they're going to get all of these tax abatements. So I think we need to look at that. But more importantly, and the state, by the way, can't do all of this. The state can do the tax incentives and the abatements, but it's those zoning regulations and it's permitting that I think where we have to work with local governments. And we need to make sure that we put some guardrails out here. We need to make sure that that the public is notified, that they have ample opportunity to have public hearings about it, to challenge these companies, to challenge their public officials. It's not done with some non-disclosure agreement that I've seen happen all over. And we give the public adequate time to see exactly what's being proposed and to challenge that. One of the things that I think is going to be important going forward, David, and this is something, and I don't know if either one are familiar with the Department of Justice consent decree that was entered in Anniston more than 25 years ago involving PCBs. You had the old Monsanto plant, Solutia, that for years was pushing out PCBs, and nobody thought a thing about it. They were getting put in the river. They were getting put in soil that people would go and just get truckloads of and then put in their yards. All right. Yep. So there were PCBs all over the yards in Anniston, all in the creeks. And there was a consent decree for Solution to clean that up. And I got appointed as the special master by the federal court here in Birmingham to kind of help oversee that, to make sure they were doing what they said. But here's a thing that I think is of interest that I would like to see every community and every public official that is dealing with this demand of these companies. As part of that consent decree, Monsanto and Solutia had to every year provide a certain amount of money to the community, not for education pieces and things like that, which is great, but for a community advisory group. What they called it a CAG. And there was a community advisory group that would meet monthly or every couple of months whenever they need to. The company would come in, tell them where they were on the cleanup, answer questions, talk. They had EPA coming in. And if you had if they would fund a community advisory group after everything had gone through the appropriate disclosures, permitting, notices, public hearings, and if the center is being built, to then provide some money for a community advisory group to meet regularly with the company, and enough money that they can hire some of their own experts to monitor the environment, to monitor the noise pollution, to monitor the water intake, to make sure that they are paying for or generating their own power. I think those things would go a long way, because data centers are going to be built. They're going to be needed. We just don't need Alabama to be the dumping ground for them and all of the data going somewhere else. We need to make sure that we do it the right way. And I think if we do that with more transparency, with more public notice, we can do this the right way. Because, guys, the technology is changing. They are being able to generate their own electricity. They're being able to recycle the water that they use and to capture water. So those things, I think technology is catching up. I think they're quieter, but we got to make sure that the zoning regs require them to do those things. And there's somebody in that community monitoring it, that the company is providing funds for and says, okay, do this and talk to us, check with us. So I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a big issue around the state, but I do think, and data centers is like one thing. There's a solar farm down in North Baldwin County where the same thing happened. Come in under cover of darkness right there next to the river that could dump into the bay. I mean, these things, what you don't know is what scares you. And if there was more information and more time to challenge it, I think we can strike the proper balance going forward. But we better start working on it now before these things get up. We can't wait, because, man, they're going up left and right.
Yeah, and I think, and though I take your point that it doesn't just affect Lowndes County, the fact is we know Lowndes County already has a significant amount of challenges that it's dealing with, and not to mention what the Trump administration has done as it relates to the efforts of the people there to just have clean water. I mean, it's insane. Let me ask you one final question from me. That is, I want to get an update from you on where things stand with you and the Alabama Democratic Party. And do you believe that the party is going to be able to be a resource to you as you try to win this election?
Tough question. I don't know the answer to. We're building our own
Okay.
campaign. I
Okay.
don't know the answer to it. I'm just being honest with you.
Okay.
I think things have been fairly neutral, which is a help to everybody, I think, over the last few months. So I really don't know whether they will be. The party will get reorganized in August after the SDC elections this past May. What I know is this. What I know is that we have been building, I built a ticket myself. There was no one else running for statewide office except Wayne Rogers, who from Birmingham, who I'd talked to for years about running. Wayne had already announced to run for Secretary of State. But everybody else came because I called them and sat down with them, cajoled some in the case of a couple of them. And so we built this, and we're running this together, and we are building our volunteers. We're building our ground game ourselves. Now we will be working. I know Anthony Daniels, the minority leader in the House, is also working on a ground game with some things with voters. So we will hopefully complement that. But at this point, I think the jury's out as to whether or not what involvement the party will have. And quite frankly, there's a lot of local elections they need to focus on as well. So we will see. We will see how it goes. I am always open if the party has something to contribute rather than just demand. We're always open. We can win this race. We can win this race with or without a party, just candidly, because we're building the infrastructure that we need. And I think, again, the evidence of the last primary, that was because of the Doug Jones campaign, that the number of voters that got out, the excitement around that, that's what got those voters out. There is no question about that and the choices that we've been able to do. So I hope so. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. But at the same time, we are building this campaign and we want everybody to get involved. We want everybody to join and to help us because this is our opportunity to make a change in this state that we haven't had in at least 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think that obviously there's been an uptick in interest. There's obviously been an uptick in enthusiasm. You see it, in the numbers themselves. I mean, the numbers don't lie. And to kind of go back to one of the first questions I think David asked about the excitement and things. The other thing that's also very helpful right now is that there is a lack of excitement, a lack of enthusiasm on the Republican side, and that is reflected in those numbers as well. You look at what happened in a very, very contentious runoff last night. For that U.S. Senate seat between Jared Hudson and Barry Moore, where millions and millions of dollars were spent on that thing. There was a very comparable race to that back in 22 between Katie Britt and Mo Brooks in another runoff. In that runoff, there were 400 and some odd thousand ballots cast. Last night, there were 300,000 ballots cast. So you're looking at a steep decline on the Republican side of things as well. I think it would also help if we didn't have such a big change at the party in August. I mean, it seems like a rough time to be going through such a change, but
it's the dumbest time in the world to do that.
Yeah.
But it is,
it's in the bylaws. I know
what it is.
Yeah.
But there's another interesting. I'm glad you brought up yesterday because there's another interesting couple of numbers out there too. And if you look back from either May 19th or last night, in either one of those Republican elections and the one election that we had on May 19th, Phil Insler got more votes each time than John Wall did. Okay?
Yes, he did.
Each time. And so that's part of the overall. This is not, I keep telling folks this, and everybody wants to put all this crap on me. I keep telling folks, this is a bigger effort than Doug Jones. This is not my ego. This is not me wanting to do anything other than the right thing for this state. And the right thing for this state are choices and people like Phil Lenzler and Ron Sparks and Jeff McLaughlin and Violet Edwards and Ross Houston and, and Wayne Rogers. This is a bigger thing than just simply the gubernatorial campaign, and I hope folks will remember that. I thought that was an interesting statistic, that our lieutenant governor race in a contested race got more votes than either one of the races in the Republican primary for the winner.
I think they've got some real problems over there, and I think that, man, if only there were some historical troubles with that guy that the Republicans elected that we could dwell on. I tell you what, have y'all thought about doing a talking raccoon commercial over there? I mean, it's, But last thing for me, we'll let you go. I know you're busy. There was a lawsuit filed by a couple of veterans, military veterans, against Tommy Tuberville. We knew it was coming. Our friend of the show and friend of yours, Barry Ragsdale, the attorney, is representing those military vets in this lawsuit against Tommy Tuberville. I guess, how do you view that as the person running against Tommy Tuberville? Where does that fit into a campaign? Listen, I know the fact that he doesn't live here is weighing heavily on a lot of voters' minds. So is that something that y'all then latch on to? Like, I know Republicans would. I mean, is that something that you press as an issue?
Yeah, look, I've always said, Josh, that it was a political issue more than a legal issue, but it is a legal issue. I mean, and hopefully the courts won't rope-a-dope this, and they ultimately will make a decision one way or another, which everybody lives with. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of evidence out there, and I think it needs to be addressed in ways that are not what even the Republican challenger McFeeters said was a farce that they did on Sunday. We're not a party to this lawsuit. We're not going to be a party to the lawsuit, but I do think it is a political issue, and it's not just an issue about even the rule of law. I mean, I think it's, you may know me. I mean, I think that there's a rule of law component to this, and following the Constitution, which ought to be somewhat important to folks. But I also think it's a credibility issue, too, when someone has to jump through so many contortions to try to prove that they're an Alabama resident. Yes. I mean, that's crazy. And who would have ever thought that would even be an issue in an Alabama race? Okay. But it is. We'll see how this plays out. I think there are a lot of questions that are going to be raised during this legal proceeding, but we'll just play it out. It is our opportunity to again contrast our campaign with a guy who is alleged to be a non-resident, living in a big old mansion down in Florida and spending all his time down there and not knowing the people of Alabama, not knowing what's good for the people of Alabama, just wanting to be a governor. And you contrast that with our campaign. So I think there is that credibility. And there's also, he raised this issue, or he's raised it when response. Why would, if he didn't think he was qualified or eligible is the more appropriate word, why would he give up his Senate seat? Well, that's a pretty easy answer, Josh, okay? If you think about it, I can tell you that's a pretty easy answer, because he has also said, in defending all of his stock trades, in defending all of his futures trades where he's betting against farmers or with farmers, mainly against farmers, he has talked about the fact that there are currently bills pending in the United States Congress, in both the House and the Senate, to prohibit members of Congress from trading stocks. He does it. Nancy Pelosi does it. He is one of the most prolific. He is the most prolific, I think, in the Senate. One of the top 5, I think, in Congress. He has literally said that he would rather not be in the Senate if they pass that bill. Yeah. If they stop that, he would rather not be in the Senate. Well, what does that tell you about where his priorities are? Well, guess what? Yeah. He comes to Alabama, he can do whatever the heck he wants, because our ethics laws are not that tough. There's no real disclosure laws the way he has in the United States Senate. We're going to propose a series of those, by the way. I don't think any constitutional officer in the state of Alabama ought to be allowed to trade stocks, especially when we're got economic development issues that we're trying to bring here, when the treasurer is doing things to try to put money in different places. I just think that we ought to pass something to stop that. And we ought to pass something for the legislature that they need to more often, they need to report every trade of every stock, of every future within 36, 72 hours after that trade is made. We need to have more transparency, guys. So you do the math of why you've got a big old house, unless he just wants to be closer to home. As governor, he just wants to be closer to home and not go back and forth to Washington, D.C. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And that, by the way, was also raised in the lieutenant governor's race against John Wall about his Tennessee driver's license and his fake IDs and his fake name. This is the best that the Republicans can get? Really?
I know, right?
I mean, come on, guys. We will take it on head on. But again, and I want people to not lose sight of the fact that we're going to have a plan for Alabama. We are going to talk about Medicaid and expansion, and we're going to talk about rural hospitals and jobs and the economy, raising the minimum wage. We're going to talk about workforce development and getting people back in the workforce. We're going to have a plan for Alabama. We're not just going to be running against the other side. We want to give people choices, and we're going to be going everywhere in this state to let folks know who we are and to challenge. I'll tell you one thing to watch for, guys. And I appreciate Josh just saying, I've been in that. I came out of the hole from Madison County, Lowndes County, wherever I've been. Right. I guess I just go into a hole in those counties where I've been all over the place. But we're going to be out there doing town halls. You're going to see the Doug Jones campaign and others out in everywhere we can get to between now and November the 3rd, literally not just talking to the folks at the local Democratic Party, but we want to get everybody in that community. I want to meet with public officials, meet with the media, and we want to do town halls to where people that have a concern, that have a question, that have a challenge, we can have that conversation. I am more than happy. We do not have enough of that in the state of Alabama, guys. You do not see any of the state officers doing it. You rarely see anybody in the legislature except the good minority Democrats in the legislature that do these group town halls. We're going to be out there doing those. And when we all get elected, we're going to keep doing them during the Doug Jones administration.
Nice. Well, listen, look, you know where our hopes lie. You know where our hopes lie here. So, hey, do it up. And if we can be of some assistance here in any way, shape, or form, we're happy to do so. Because I think David said it best to begin with. There's one thing that we need to keep from happening, and one thing that we need to actually happen. So let's do it and get it done. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime. Let's do it on a regular basis between now and November.
Absolutely, you can count on that. All right, that is your next governor. Next governor, Doug Jones. We'll be back in a minute. Alabama Politics This Week. Back in a moment.